Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, jolly old Saint Nick. The man goes by many names, but his mission has always remained the same, to spread joy and prosperity to children. Then to judge them, which is fine for some reason. He's a man that we allow into our homes, a man we trust implicitly, a man who hoards technology well beyond our means, capable of crossing the globe in a single night and spying on every child on the planet. In Russia, he goes by Father Frost, or at least until the Russian Revolution, after which he was known more affectionately as an enemy to the state. In Germany, he bears an uncanny resemblance to Belsnickle, another bearded gift-giving character. He's just like Santa, only slightly more terrifying. But who is he really? Where did he come from? Is he the only one of his kind? Or are there others? But first, today's episode is going to talk about prominent mythic figures across a wide variety of cultures and history. Every culture has its own stories, traditions, and values, and it isn't our place to tell you how to appreciate or celebrate anything. I'm also going to absolutely butcher some of the pronunciations on these characters. I'm so sorry. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Allow me to introduce St. Nicholas of Myra, a 3rd century monk devoted to the Christian faith. Myra was a region of Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor, also known as modern-day Turkey. Known as a pious man with a kind nature, St. Nicholas had an affinity toward gift-giving and charity. There are a lot of stories about the man, but we're talking about someone who lived his life during the 3rd century, so the credibility of some deeds are a little easier to discern than others. For example, use your inheritance to pay off the dowry of 3 young women so that their father won't have to employ them at a brothel. Sure, that could have happened. Resurrect 3 slain boys who had been left in barrels because a crazed innkeeper wanted to pickle them. Well, hang on a second. Authentic or not, these stories of generosity and kindness have kept St. Nicholas's tale alive and well since his recorded death on December 6, 343 CE, or St. Nicholas's Day. Well, that and his tendency to trade toys for the hay Dutch children would leave in clogs for him. What did he do with the hay? Well, feed it to his donkey, of course. Though at this point in his career, he would be known as Sinterklaas, an abbreviation on the Dutch inflection of his name, Sint Nicolaas. That was, of course, until the 16th century with the Protestant Reformation in Europe, a sort of pivot in spiritual ideology that elected to, among other things, do away with the stories of Sinterklaas and other such saints. Nevertheless, it was a tough sell to the community. Perhaps because change, particularly when contextualized by centuries of tradition, is something we struggle with as a people. Or maybe it was because the Reformation's replacement for St. Nicholas was baby Jesus. Hard to tell. To quote Jerry Bowler, author of Santa Claus: A History and professor of history at the University of Manitoba, the infant's carrying capacity is very limited. And he's not very scary either. Hold on to that last part of the quote, we're going to touch on that soon. Needless to say, folks didn't really adapt. The story of Sinterklaas would inevitably find itself traveling across the great Atlantic Ocean and settling roots within the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam, also known today as New York City. Lionized primarily by a group of Dutch intellectuals that referred to themselves as the Knickerbockers, who would continue to carry the legends of St. Nicholas for the next few centuries. This is when we find the name of Sinterklaas morph into the much more familiar Santa Claus through the writings of American author Washington Irving. These stories, and stories by other writers, would continue to shape the figure into the one we know today with the addition of a flying wagon, a team of reindeer, and a fondness towards
cookies and milk.
Oh, don't mind if I do.
Oh, no, they're not for you, silly. They're for Santa. Ho, ho, ho. Aren't you leaving anything out for him this year?
Free food for a festive freeloader? Nah, I'll pass.
Oh, okay. And what about you, Brew?
Huh?
It's almost Christmas, Brew. Haven't you prepared anything for Santa?
Oh, right. Preparations. Thanks for reminding me, Chill.
Hey, quick question. Feel free to answer at your own pace, but,
What the hell is going on here?
Precautionary measures. I've been researching Santa, as well as a few other Santa-like characters. Some of what I'm finding is, well, a little disturbing. Better to be safe than sorry. Would you like to hear about Santa's evil goat friend?
Yes, please.
Remember when Bowler suggested that baby Jesus wasn't scary enough to replace Sinterklaas? Well, our next subject is Krampus, a figure prominent in Austria, Bavaria, Croatia, Slovakia, and other parts of Central Europe. If you're not from that neck of the world, then you might have heard of them from the 2015 film Krampus, or potentially the 2015 smash hit A Christmas Story, starring Krampus, or 2015's critical darling Krampus: The Reckoning, which is not a sequel to Krampus because it came out 3 weeks earlier. Or from these. Hey Marvel, feel free to take notes. There are a couple things that make Krampus unique. You think it'd be the horns and the hooves, but no, he's just a satyr and that's how they look. For those unaware, a satyr is a mythical nature spirit traditionally distinguished by several goat-like features, usually sporting a few extra hooves, hair, and horns than your average non-goat person. They're also depicted as being great at parties. I didn't like parties before. I'm not sure where I stand on them now. To quote from the 1958 journal entry, The Krampus Hysteria by Folklore Enterprises writer Maurice Bruce, behind the good saint hovers the black, shaggy, goat-horned figure of the Krampus. Cloven hooves and a long tail are conspicuous features of this roaring, prancing satyr who rattles the chains that hang from his wrists and brandishes a bundle of birch twigs which he wields with more energy than discrimination. Okay, so I made up my mind about satyr parties. What I find fascinating is that throughout most of these depictions, Krampus is working alongside Santa rather than taking his position. So instead of a Santa figure that discerns naughty and nice, we have a dynamic with St. Nick divvying out candy and presents to nice children, while Krampus swoops up the naughty ones to eat. 2016, Krampus Unleashed. Guess which one this is a sequel to? None of them!
Well, wait a second. So, Tricky Nick doesn't have to be held accountable because Mr. Tumnus here does all the dirty work for him?
Well, I guess we know what kind of goat Krampus is. A scapegoat.
Let me out. I don't care what's out there.
It's just a little satirical humor.
Oh, God.
The word satyr
Stop
is
it.
in satirical, and obviously I thought that would be very funny. For our next subject, we'll be keeping things chilly and traveling north. Grilla the...
Gorilla's a gorilla? Gorilla grill.
What? No.
Grill is a girl. Girl.
Hey, don't let the internet have that!
Close. But neither of those at all. Grilla, the Christmas witch of Iceland, has all the hallmarks of your traditional Christmas carnivore. The name Grilla, when translated, alludes to the Danish idiom for growler. Which, I mean, yeah, spot on. Google told me that Grilla was Icelandic for Bugatti. To quote Terry Gunnell, the head of the folkloristics department at the University of Iceland, ahem, you don't mess with Grilla. Short but to the point. Some poems depict her as a troll, others an ogress or a giantess, which is problematic because those are very different pages in the monster manual and require their own strategies. Regardless, Grilla is known to judge children and punish them accordingly. If you've been naughty, you get thrown into a sack, taken to her cave, and eaten. A system that by this point in our list falls under the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mantra. However, what makes Grilla interesting is that she doesn't really have a rewards program. Quite the opposite, in fact. If, Grilla willing, your behavior has been deemed good enough this year, then you just sort of don't see her, which is fine. But that creates an issue when considering countermeasures. For starters, if she never visits you when you're good, then we won't be able to lure her into a false sense of security like we could with other members of this list. Meaning that the only Grilla we can encounter is one who is primed and ready for combat. Hypothetically, you could take the fight to her home in the lava fields of Dimmu Borgir, which this time Google translated to mean dark cities, which is fine and not terrifying. Only problem is that Dimmu Borgir is also the home of Lepaludi, third husband to Grilla. Third time's the charm, I suppose. That or she was bloated after her first 2 servings of husband. She ate them. That shouldn't be surprising at this point, but I thought it was better to clarify. Lepaludi isn't known to venture out much, not even for a romantic session of kidnapping some kids napping, instead having more of a reputation for being lazy and a bit of a homebody. That doesn't make us friends, so if you're looking to challenge Grilla, you have one of 2 options. Be naughty for a year and wait for her to approach you in your own home, or take the battle to her and her husband within their stomping grounds of Dimmu Borgir. Also, they have 13 sons. And a demon cat. Are you getting all this down because it's going to get crazier? Alright, so let's try to get through this one quick because we could be here all night otherwise. Grilla's 13 sons are a group of pranksters known as the Yule Lads and operate throughout the month of December, appearing in the 12 nights leading to Christmas morning and leaving one by one over another 13 days. So, you'll likely hear about their shenanigans between December 12th all the way up until the 6th of January. The first to arrive is Stekjastur, known to tease and torment sheep. Also, he has peg legs. I guess sometimes the sheep fight back. Next, we have Giljagur, who likes to hide in gullies and steal cow's milk. Speaking of thieves, we have Glugagagir.
Nailed it.
Basically, the lad that spies through windows to case the joint before robbing it. Bugnakrakir steals sausages from the rafters. Ketkrokir uses a hook to take any and all meat he can find. Also, Stufur, a short lad who likes to steal pie crusts. Potaskafil likes to take leftovers from pots. And Vrasliker, who steals spoons to lick. Askaslikir will wait under beds in the hopes that someone may leave a bowl next to it to snag. Huraskerir likes to slam doors because he's fun, like that. Getafir is more into sniffing doors with his unreasonably large nose, but only so that he could locate leaf bread. Kertasnikir steals candles because this was back when candles were made of tallow and were technically edible. Also, there's Skirgemir. He likes yogurt. I'm inclined to believe he's stolen the yogurt, but honestly, there's nothing that explicitly states that the yogurt isn't his. He might just really like yogurt is the thing. Suffice it to say, the Yule lads were primarily focused on getting their grub on, save for a couple of them who, as far as I could tell, were just jerks for the sake of it. Generally speaking, though, I'd rather a visit from them than their parents. But none of them compare to what may possibly be the most terrifying creature of all. Yolakutherin, also known as the Yule Cat. Yolakutherin is a giant cat and companion to the Grilla clan. Much like their fur mama, Yolakutherin also judges children and punishes them accordingly.
No! Okay? You better not be about to say that that cat eats people if they've been bad. I can't handle that.
Oh, goodness, no, not at all.
Phew, oof. I was worried that maybe
They eat people who aren't wearing the latest fashion. I'm sorry, I really should have started with that. Yeah, it turns out that Yolakutherin isn't terribly concerned with whether or not you've been naughty or nice. Rather, they only seem to be worried about whether or not your wardrobe is fresh. If children were wearing last year's cardigan during the present holiday, they might find themselves taking part in a different kind of fancy feast. This is particularly terrifying because fashion is not only subjective, but ignorant to the times. Styles come back into rotation constantly. Are we to expect that Yolakutherin is capable of constantly keeping up to date with the current trends? They're a cat. Oh, that reminds me.
What's this?
presents?
Precautionary measures. I already know you're good people, so that deals with Krampus, but I'm not entirely sure if your clothes are new.
You shouldn't
man.
have.
Which one am I?
You know, I started this video confused and threatened by mythical creatures who judged whether we were naughty or nice, but maybe I was thinking too hard about it. Maybe being naughty or nice are just things we know. That might have been enough for St. Nicholas back then. It feels enough for me now.
Enough to, I don't know, maybe turn off the panic room button?
Put the shirt on. Now.